The benefits of being totally unreasonable. If you master this, your practice will never be the same again. I just landed back in Sydney after spending the weekend with the most formidable, heart-centered group of people that I know. As always, there were many lessons learned, and I'd love to share a few takeaways that I hope will be useful for you both in your practice and in your life. I was in LA for a meeting of my chiropractic mastermind, the UAC. As far as winter weather goes, that was spectacular. The event was held in equal parts in the conference room, the bar, and by the pool. The UAC events are always at iconic locations, and this one was no exception. We met at the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills. The first insight that I want to share involves the level of service that I experienced and how it applies in your practice. Although the hotel's beautiful, it's not the biggest, it's not the fanciest hotel I've ever stayed in. However, their level of service is second to none. And it was the bespoke touches and the personal interactions that made it a truly memorable venue. From the moment the doorman opened the door of my Uber on arrival, I was greeted with, "Welcome back, doctor." I still have no idea how they knew who I was at that point. Surely they don't just guess that everyone who arrives is a doc who stayed there before. I got checked in right away, despite being way early because my flight landed at 6 a.m. and I was told I could check out as late as 4 p.m. Now, I don't know how much time you've spent in hotels lately, but in my experience, a 4 p.m. checkout is pretty much unheard of. So it's fair to say that they made a pretty good first impression. But it really became next level when I stepped into my room. I was greeted with a fresh fruit platter, a personalized handwritten note welcoming me back, and not only that, my initials were monogrammed on the pillowcase. And my last initial was on every towel, washcloth, and bath mat in the place, right down to even the toilet paper. The linen was a cool touch, but what really stood out was the people. Every single interaction I had with every hotel employee was totally impeccable. They were friendly, welcoming, incredibly helpful. It was like they knew what I needed even before I did. Now, all of this could seem wildly over the top, except it didn't feel that way. Even despite being a guy who's not really into anything fancy, in Australia we kind of think of that as a bit wanky. But it felt genuine. It felt real. Not one single word or smile throughout the entire weekend seemed forced or insincere. Our brains are wired for connection and picking up on subtle social nuances. We evolved in tribes where social standing meant survival and access to resources, so our mirror neurons are always firing. So whether we're consciously aware of it or not, we can always tell when someone is just doing their job, going through the motions, versus when their heart is truly in it. So my question for you is, how can you give your patients that level, that kind of experience? How can you make them feel special and incredibly valued in a way that's totally authentic? I'm sure we've all heard Mary Angelou's famous words, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." Applying this in your practice is incredibly powerful. In a world filled with increasingly surface-level interactions, making people feel genuinely seen, heard, and valued is a healing act in and of itself. It immediately shifts them out of their typical day-to-day sympathetic dominant state and into a more relaxed parasympathetic mode. It not only makes them easy to adjust, but they literally heal faster and more deeply. It also makes great business sense. The Peninsula Hotel was amazing, and the price definitely reflected that. Yet I wasn't worried about the cost, even despite our crappy Australian dollar. The exchange of value felt worth every single cent. That's the power of unreasonable hospitality. If you really want to apply this in your practice, I highly recommend the book Unreasonable Hospitality, The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect by William Guidara. The book totally transformed how I thought about this subject and about the level of experience I wanted to create for my patients. Implementing the ideas in the book also supercharged my team culture. It made my clinic a more fun, lively, and satisfying place to work. One of the unconventional shifts that Will made that enabled his restaurant, 11 Madison Park, to become #1 in the world was to focus on service rather than just on the food, although of course the food had to be world-class too. Up until that point, top restaurants in the world were all about the food. The service was just a delivery mechanism for the chef's vision. It's easy to fall into this kind of thinking when it comes to running a practice. As a clinician, I'm obsessively focused on the quality of the care that we provide. I spend hours every single week training with all of my docs on skills and technique. We consistently deliver remarkable results. But that's only one part of the overall patient experience. Sometimes people will put up with mediocre service if the food's great. But why not optimize for both? The way our chiropractic assistants care for and communicate with our patients is also critical. That's why we also spend hours on CA training every week in my practice too. I love the story that was shared by one of the speakers this weekend, Raymond Kemp Sr. Raymond served in the US Navy for over 30 years, rising to the rank of Fleet Master Chief of Europe and Africa. He directed over 56,000 service members, civilians and contractors and family members all across the European and African continents. He commanded aircraft carriers and directly advised multiple world leaders. After retiring from the Navy, he founded Kemp Solutions, a leadership consulting company that's worked with a whole bunch of major organizations around the world. So it's fair to say he knows a thing or two about leadership. He related a story about when John F. Kennedy toured NASA during preparation for the Apollo moon landing in 1969. When he approached a janitor who was mopping the floor and asked him what he was doing, the janitor's reply was, "Sir, I'm putting a man on the moon." Now that's a guy who understands and is completely congruent with the values and the mission of his organization. How do you think every member of your team would answer that question? Service was obviously one of the highest values of the Peninsula Hotel, and every single employee that I encountered embodied it completely. According to Raymond Kemp Sr., the real measure of alignment in your business is how well the lowest person on the totem pole can articulate the mission, vision, and values of the organization and demonstrate them in concrete action. I'd encourage you to run your own team through this filter and take action on what you learn. I know I will be. I'm pretty confident how they'll do. So far this year, I've had 2 of my CA team inspired to enroll to become practitioners. To me, that's a good sign that our values around healing are flowing congruently throughout the whole team. I was just at another meeting of practitioners this weekend, and someone told me that they currently had 9 of their patients at various stages of going through chiropractic college. 9 people that inspired to become practitioners. When you're having that kind of impact, you know that you're communicating your values effectively. So, my team's pretty congruent, but we can always up our game further. In Will's restaurant, their unreasonable acts of hospitality just began with little things, like sending a team member out to put change in the customers' parking meters so they didn't have to rush their dinner. Right? Not a big deal for the team member, but it made a huge impression on the guests. I mean, what restaurant does that, right? From there, it just escalated. For example, when a server overheard children at one table wishing they could go sledding in the snow in Central Park, they sent a team member out to buy sleds at a local store and give them to diners as a surprise after-dinner gift. And from there, it became a game, a challenge to see who could create the coolest, most unexpected, most unreasonable acts of hospitality. There's some great stories in the book. It's really entertaining. It's worth a read. The premise is that you want to wow your customers or your patients by going just so far above and beyond their expectations that it's not even vaguely reasonable, but it's definitely memorable. The relatively minimal cost was always outweighed by the once-in-a-lifetime memories they were able to create, and the stories that then got told again and again and again. In our clinic, it sometimes looks like little things like this. For example, having a team member go out and move their car mid-shift so a patient who is struggling with mobility doesn't have to walk to get into the clinic. Or having a team member drop off supplements and a care package to a patient's house rather than just posting them out. Or driving miles to treat an elderly patient in the hospital when they were recovering from a fall. We're constantly looking for ways to level up on this. Brainstorming, it's fun, it keeps the team motivated, and it's a constant source of energy for the whole team. One of the keys that was emphasized in the book, which we've carried over into my clinic, is that what looks like off-the-cuff spontaneity is often actually a well-thought-out, intentional system. When something's a big winner once, how can you make it easy to replicate and yet still have it feel totally personalized? This can be a challenge, but when you nail it, you make someone's day, or sometimes even their whole year, and you turn a loyal patient into a lifelong raving fan. The Peninsula Hotel this weekend was a flawless example of the principles of unreasonable hospitality in action. So now let's talk about the power of surrounding yourself with the right people. Although the location and the level of service definitely enhanced the weekend, those things were really just a bonus. What makes UAC events special is the caliber of the people involved. For a start, the speakers are always excellent. Raymond Kemp Sr was an inspiration, and the other speaker, Dr. Gary Sanchez, was also awesome. I took so much from his message about finding your why, but also about finding your how and your what, that I plan to dedicate a whole issue of the foot-brain connection to sharing what I learned and how you can apply it to your business, your family, and your life. In fact, I've also contracted Gary to work directly with my team and my family. However, beyond all of that, it's the actual UAC members that consistently make these meetings so powerful. People often look at me like I'm crazy and ask me, why the hell would you fly all the way across the world and back just for a weekend? But the answer is simple as that. It's the people, and it's the relationships that I've built with them. Every trip, I come back humbled and inspired to think bigger, to grow and to be better, as a practitioner, as a parent, and as a man. It'd be easy to be intimidated in that environment. Literally everyone there has this impressive list of achievements, skills, and talents, but yet no one brings any ego to the table. It's one of the most supportive, warmest, friendliest groups I've ever been involved with. Over the weekend, I had some seriously high-level conversations, clinical conversations, business conversations, and life conversations. And underlying every one of them was this consistent theme of, how can we help each other? Money isn't the motivator for this group. That was abundantly clear when we did Dr. Gary's Uncover Your Why process. However, it is one of the simplest metrics we can apply to measure impact. And the cumulative and growing impact of this group is amazing. Each year they have an anonymous one-question survey. What was the gross income of your natural healthcare business this year? This year, the group total was $538 million. That's not a bad impact for a group of less than 100 health professionals. Reminds me of Margaret Mead's words, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I was sharing a drink with Ray in the bar on Saturday night, and I asked him, with all your experience in the Navy and training groups around the world on leadership, I'd love your honest opinion. We often talk in the UAC about the nature of this group. What do you see? What's your observation? Are we right, or do we just have our heads up our own asses? And his answer was, there's a level of authenticity in this group that's unlike anything I've ever seen in any other group. Hearing that warmed my heart because it resonates with my experience. Authenticity really is a superpower. In a hyper-stimulated social media world that's constantly telling you why you're not enough and you should be more like everybody else, being your authentic self is the most powerful, contrarian thing you can do. And it's exactly what the world needs. When you turn up ready to give and serve, looking to create not just unreasonable hospitality, but committed to creating unreasonable healing, lives change. When I come from that place, whether it's explaining chiropractic care or the benefits of better balance orthotics, the only question I usually get asked is, how soon can we get started? I know this is what you do in your clinic every day too. Thank you for making the world a better place. One more thing. I just want to send a huge shout out to the Cooper family who invited me to their home on Sunday for an authentic, all-American experience of eating barbecue and watching the Super Bowl. That was an act of unreasonable hospitality that I won't forget. Your place, your clinic, your family, they're all awesome. So thank you so much. And by the way, if you'd like to know more about the UAC, I'll place a link in the comments below. It's an invite-only membership, and I'd love to have some of our Better Balance docs in the room. If it feels like it might be a good fit for you, reach out, let's talk. We'll see about having you as a guest at our next event. All right, thanks guys, have a great week.